Well, now we're going to talk about charting. And simply put, charting is a way to graphically represent the data that you have. So up to this point, we've done a lot of formulas, we've done some pivot tables, some other analysis, and now we want to show it off and present it to a wider audience. So in this module, we're going to learn how to make several different types of charts and a lot of different formatting options. And in this module, in the chart intro, we're just going to look at some of the chart types that are out there and understand what they might be used for. So you should be on the chart intro tab. There's not really any exercises that go with this module. It's just kind of an intro to charting. So we can scroll down here and I've got a little table of our bakery data. And again, looking at that, it's all accurate. We've got a summation of all the stores versus the dates and all the sales that were in there. And it's not really easy to see what the biggest sale was. So we come down here, we're going to start with the most basic and most commonly used chart, the column chart. Now, column charts are usually best suited to show differences in categories or dates. And so the first chart on the left, we've got a group of columns for every date that we had sales. And if you see in the legend here, we've got Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens represented for every date, but in a column. So it's a little easier to see the values. And it really jumps out almost immediately that the Manhattan store on Thursday was the best day of revenue. It also shows that Mondays are probably about the worst day. It's a lot easier to see it in a visual chart that's well designed than in a table. And if I scroll over to the right a little bit, I see another column chart, but this time instead of having dates across the bottom or the x-axis, we have the stores, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. And again, we can see here, we can see a trend of what days had the highest revenue and what were the lowest. So right away we see that Monday across the board is the lowest revenue day, and Thursday is pretty much the highest for all the stores. And let's scroll down a little bit and look at bar charts next. Now, bar charts are essentially column charts turned on their side. And this is where, again, presenting your data, you're going to want to try these different ones and see which one resonates the best with the data you're showing. A lot of times for me with a bar chart, if I have many columns, like 20 or 30, I think it's easier to see that in a bar chart than across the bottom and have each one be a column. But again, a lot of this is personal preference. And if we scroll to the right, we see, again, a different representation of the revenue. This time it's by store again, and the bars representing each of the dates. One thing to note too is all the different formatting I've put on these charts. We're going to learn how to do all of that in the lessons that follow. And you're going to see it's really not as hard as it might seem. Next, we'll go down and talk about the line chart and the area chart. Now, line charts are usually used when you're trying to establish a trend or a pattern. And most of the time, they're used with dates, whether it's dates or weeks or months or quarters. What the line chart does is it takes one of your data points and connects it to the next one so that we see visually the pattern of the trend the data is going in. And we see throughout the week, we get more and more revenue up until Thursday, then it drops off slightly on Friday. Really easy to see that comparison across different data series, which would be Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. Over to the right, we have an area chart. It's similar to a line chart, but it's filled in. So whereas the line chart just shows the line, area fills in everything below it. Now this can be tricky if you have several data series, so it's not always the best option for showing trends and patterns. But sometimes you might just have one, and the area does give kind of a feeling of volume where that there's a lot of items there. All right, let's go down to some category type charts. We've got the pie and the donut chart. Now the first one we're going to look at is the pie chart. This is a very simple representation of, in our case, the revenue between the three stores. And the pie just shows it graphically. It shows you how much revenue is with each store. There's a lot of debate about pie charts in the industry. A lot of people think that there's other charts like a column or a bar shows the data more effectively, that you can't really tell the pie chart. Again, a lot of this is personal preference. Some people really like a pie. I will say it's probably better for a summary level view, and you really don't want more than 8 categories because then it just starts to get a little bit too busy in there. Over to the right, we have a very similar chart. It's called the donut chart, and you immediately see the main difference is the middle's cut out. Now, people tend to like this better for a couple of reasons. Some people say with the middle being cut out, it's easier to see the difference in just those radial segments around the middle of the donut. The other thing is, it's kind of a neat practice to put information in the middle of that donut. What's the title of the chart? What stores is it for? What date ranges was it for? The donut, again, is very similar to the pie, but just a couple subtle differences. So next, let's look at a little bit more advanced chart. Now, we're not going to really be building this in this module. We're going to stick to the simple ones, but I want to show you just a couple of the more advanced charts to kind of get your interest piqued. So up to now, the charts have kind of shown summary of information by day or by category. This chart is called a scatter plot, and the purpose of this is to show every data point that we're looking at on the chart so that we can get a feel for where all the data is, again, visually, easier for us to comprehend and digest. So this one shows all the sales in its quantity versus revenue. So across the bottom, we have the quantity. So here's a data point here, and it says in Queens, we had 100 sold and we made $250. So there's more things you can do with a scatter plot, kind of some more statistical functions, but again, just want to make you aware of that. And the last one I'm going to show you in the intro is called a sunburst. It's kind of a derivative of a donut chart, but you can see right away you have another rung. You can have several different rungs. It's a way to show categories in a donut chart, but have more detail of information as we go out into the rungs. There's a plus and minus to this chart. The plus is immediately it's very interesting, draws your eyes in, gets your attention. And maybe there's another chart close to this one and shows the detail in a more conventional chart. But it does its job. It draws us into the worksheet to look at things. Now where I think it's not that great is it doesn't really tell me anything. There's a lot going on and I can't really figure out what the chart is trying to tell me. Is there one thing that stands out or not? It's kind of difficult in that way. There's several charts you'll see that are purely for visual aesthetic and to get people drawn in. And I feel like the sunburst is one of those. So let's scroll back up to the top. And I wanted to show you the last thing in this intro module is that when I'm in a table, I'm going to go to the insert menu, and over to the right is all the different chart types. There's the pie, the line, the column, and we can click on recommended charts or all charts. So I'm going to click on recommended charts. And here Excel kind of looks at our table and gives us some samples. Again, here's a column chart, here's a clustered column, a heat map, which we're not really going to cover, and that sunburst. But if we go to all charts, here's where we can see every type of chart Excel has to offer. Now we're going to focus on the basic ones in this module, the column, line, pie, bar. But you see there's many more. XY scatter plot, stock, surface, radar, one of my favorites, tree, and then we have some statistical charting, a histogram, box whisper, waterfall. And we are going to talk about the combo because that's a really useful chart too. But you see there's so many to choose from. And as we get into building them, you're going to see how many different options you can put on them too. So that's the intro to charting. Let's get ready for the next lesson and start learning how to build charts.